United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any additions, deletions, changes to the proposed agenda for this evening? Being none. Roll call, Lisa.
President Schneider,
Present.
Pro Tem Dyke,
Present.
Councilmember Feldman,
Present.
Councilmember Glasser,
Present.
Councilmember Kuligowski,
Present.
Councilmember Powell,
Present.
Councilmember Steffler.
Okay, communication. So we have communication from Almont Township regarding their intent to update their master plan, separate and apart from ours, which would probably be much better. Sorry, Township. And so they're providing notice that they're working on their plan and they're going to be providing copies. The one thing I don't know, and I don't know if you know, Caitlin, when they say, once the plan is adopted, township plan is adopted, a copy of the adopted plan will also be sent to you. Is you, us, the entire population of the town? I don't know who they're going to be sending it to.
Sure. And so the adoption process for the master plan for the township or the village is the exact same. So we already sent ours several months ago. They will be sending us a draft of their public hearing. So that is a copy that we will be receiving. What that notice is talking about is the copy. If you want a hard copy, you have to send them notice requesting the hard copy. Otherwise, they can send you an email and give you a digital copy. But at the very end of the process is your other time where they're also going to give you a copy of the plan. So that's what that notice is essentially indicating, is that we're going to give you a digital copy of the public hearing and then the final one that's adopted.
That will be coming to council?
So it's given to the village, and then the village can decide which bodies it goes to. We have a 63-day review period for the public hearing draft version where we can provide input to the township on changes or things that we encourage them to do. Once it's adopted, though, it's adopted.
The language that's provided in this notice of intent is that they're not going to be presenting their master plan to the entire township population. That be correct?
So they are required as part of the public hearing process to put a notice in the paper. And so that will be one of the requirements, and that's how they're noticing their residents.
And then residents can request a copy?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, okay. Any discussion from council regarding this? Apparently we're ahead of the township at this point, but okay, we will move on then to the October 3rd minutes, a regular meeting of council. Let's see. Oh. So, regular agenda item number 1. Lisa, I'm going to throw some things out to you, and you can hopefully understand what I'm trying to fix here. Okay, on regular agenda item number 1, fireworks ordinance amendment, second reading and adoption. So the second line of the first paragraph of regular agenda item number 1, the fireworks ordinance, there's a second sentence on that line that begins with, she explained that was a first reading. I believe after the word reading, we need a that. So to read that it was a first reading that was held on September 5. Okay? Then next, okay. That's taken care of. Then, regular agenda item number 2. Line 2. Oh, actually. Oh, yeah. First paragraph, and that item has 3 paragraphs. So the first one, wherein Councilmember Steffler is indicating she's going to be abstaining. And of course, you can't just abstain for any reason you feel like. You have to have a basis for it. So it should state in there, beginning with the second line, where it says Liability Protection Act. Instead of a period, it should be a comma. And we should add the language, the reason for her abstaining, because of a potential conflict of interest. Period. I'm going too fast, anything, Lisa? Let me know. Okay. Kim, I think, was not having the best of days because I got a bunch. But okay, regular agenda item number 3. 2.
Back to section number 2 with
Okay.
the passing for the third paragraph. Should, it says passed unanimously. Should it also stay with Councilmember Scheffler abstaining?
No.
She only abstained from
She
the
only
first
abstained
one.
on the first motion.
Mhm.
She didn't have a conflict with the second motion.
The PFAS one, she didn't.
Oh, yeah, because both of them were combined in the Flow Act as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So regular agenda number 3. Oh, God, line 2.
Seeing a 2, that's what you're looking for.
Yep.
He also presented to council with the proposed application.
This was with regard to signing the letters. Oh, maybe. Sorry about that. So I actually am still on regular agenda item number 2. So going to the second paragraph that begins with President Pro Tem Dyke moved. And then the second line, beginning with Councilmember Steffler abstaining, to approve, and after the word approve should come the word of. So it reads to approve of Manager Trent, and then cross out to sign and insert in place of to sign the word signing. So it will read to approve of Manager Trent signing the letter of support. Okay, and the same with the third paragraph. Because it's the same language, line 2, unanimously to approve. It should be of Manager Trent, cross out to sign, and make it signing the letter of support. Moving to council manager comment time. Councilmember Feldman raised an issue with regard to traffic enforcement ordinance, and it ended with him indicating, or it was a consensus of council, get clarification writing, and after the word writing, I think we should cross out the word of, and it should be in writing from Police Chief Martin.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Just a little better English. And then the very last paragraph, President Schneider stated the sale, that the way it's phrased there could look like theater and medical were one building, so if it could state that the sale of the theater building and medical buildings. If you could insert the word building after theater, please. Okay, that's it for minutes. Anybody else in council have anything with regard to minutes? Okay. All right, general fund. Streets, local streets, Parks and Recreation Fund.
This is DDA.
Oh, okay.
It says other administration activities, but that's all DDA expenses, and I do have a question for that.
So on page
Page 11.
6 of, well, actually, I'm looking at page 6.
It says 6 of 9 in the upper right
Oh,
corner.
and
At the bottom, it says
yeah.
11.
Page 11, yeah, bottom right hand corner. So that's the DDA fund.
Yeah, so I do have a question with
Sure.
that. Maintenance, is that our normal annual maintenance, $2,800? Or is that, did something happen that we had to fix the fountain?
I think it was partly due to fixing the fountain and other maintenance work that's been coming in over the last couple of weeks as well.
Okay, because it just seemed like a lot.
Yeah.
It's not normally, I'm sure it wasn't a budget line to spend $2,800 on the fountain.
Typically,
Because it's not closed yet.
there's a maintenance expense.
Yeah.
It may not always be quite that much, but continuously having to fool around with it. So it had, I believe it, up to this point, had kind of a metal covering, which has been
Yep.
more and more of a problem. And I think replacing that and, I don't know, shrink wrap, or whatever they're gonna do, something much less expensive, but require less maintenance, because the metal covering has always been a problem.
Yeah.
And constantly having to fix it and then cleaning and winterizing it and all that sort of thing. So there's always a cost associated with it. And I think the change they're making, it maybe is why it's so much, but you're always going to get hit with something.
Yeah, this is just expenditures though from prior months, not yet, correct? Because it's not closed yet. I did notice the $135, which I went back and looked at other budgets, and that's the normal amount. That's why I asked. It just seemed out of the ordinary.
So they're trying to improve.
Yep.
They are concerned with that. Anybody else on DDA? Sewer fund, water fund, equipment fund, payroll register report. Water report. DPW monthly report.
Yeah. The work orders by category. We had discussions last meeting in regards to the work that the DPW did with the DDA and how it was captured. And you said it was captured through work orders. So I'm looking at the work orders by category, and there's maintenance DDA, there's DDA banners, there's DDA setup for barricades, there's maintenance parks, but they spend probably a half a day to a day helping redo the pocket park. What would that fall under? Because I didn't see anything, a work order for DDA doing the umbrellas, taking out the old benches, putting in the new tables. I don't see that captured in the work order. Flow sheet that you gave us.
Yeah, I don't have an answer.
It's in his narrative, but
It's in his narrative, but we were told that everything was captured in a work order.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't captured in a work order for historical purposes and billing, it should be in a work order.
So then we could take that up with the DPW superintendent.
Yep. Yep.
So we can pass that along to them that we're looking for that
If
information.
that's how we're gonna track all the work, then it should be reflected.
Mhm.
So I did have another question on that, not related to DDA though.
Sure.
So David, in this summary, it says that the state lab has been making mistakes with our water sampling. So we've taken it upon ourselves, which I think is the right thing to do, to make sure we get a reliable lab to test our water. Does the state know that they're messing up on our water samples?
They are aware of our concern, but they're taking the attitude that it is what it is, and they're slapping our hands a little bit in that regard. And they did give us a violation notice that we have to respond to in a timely manner. But
Because we went around them? Because we don't trust their lab?
So they basically saying nobody's died yet?
Well, yeah, they're saying they couldn't possibly mess up.
Yeah.
And our water person isn't here.
Yeah, so the results were satisfactory. It's just that the timing and the lab issue that they had resulted in their estimation of noncompliance, even though we pleaded with them to have mercy, but they showed none.
Okay.
Surprise, surprise.
Okay.
Anybody else? Questions? Okay. DPW? Tim, were you looking at work orders by category?
Yes.
On page 26, and that's what's
Yeah.
the one that's missing. Okay. Thank you. Okay, wastewater treatment plant. Police report. Enforcement officer report. Construction code authority, AKA building permit report.
Actually, if we could go back to the code enforcement.
Want to go back to
Yeah, just
OEO?
Yeah, just a quick question. So there's a couple of addresses on here that keep repeating, like since May, I see one for May, June, August, and 2 in September. And they say closed, but then they show back up a few months later, and then they're opened and closed. I guess the question I have is none of them, they show as new instances, not second letter sent or third letter sent. Are we not necessarily giving ourselves the right path forward by closing it out and then finding out in a few months that the same address is getting the same violation? It's a separate line, and then they close it out. I mean, if we keep doing that, then you just continuously get a warning, right? And then the last one is a more serious violation that I see that a letter was sent and it just says closed. I don't know if that means that they responded or they fixed it. The one I'm looking at is this 205 Courier. It is one specific one, but then there's a few others as well that I see that repeat. I guess I'm just wondering what our process is once we open and close and then repeat violators.
Particular the Courier one that you just mentioned, we kept monitoring that, sent another notice to the property owner, and they did ultimately respond and do some cleanup on the property. And Kat told me earlier today that she was closing that out, that enough progress had been made that, we were close it out for right now and monitor it and see what happens going forward.
Anybody else on that? Okay, so we're looking at construction code authority, building permit report, financial position report, treasurer's report. Any commentary from council as to any of those items? If not, entertain a motion. Motion by, made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Glasser, to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Unanimously approved by all those members in attendance. Now is the time, audience, for public comment for any item that is on a regular agenda for this evening. Is there any public comment? I'll rush up at once. Okay. Okay, moving on to our regular agenda, master plan update. Is it your turn, Caitlin? How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
So I'm Caitlin Haven. I'm your planning consultant with Wade Trim. So as you may be aware, we have been working on the master plan update. The master plan is a philosophy document, essentially trying to give us a roadmap into our 20-year future. And so we've been working with the Planning Commission primarily, talking about a lot of different things regarding land use, housing, what our demographics are, population. And so one of the things that's coming up from public engagement standpoint is we're going to be working on our open house. So we're going to have an open call for 3 hours, going over a variety of different topics, looking for input, preference on different strategies and things of that nature. So one of the first things we had talked about is a new community slogan. Part of it is in past meetings, we have kind of migrated away from the apple tree typical logo to our A, orange and black logo. And so one of the things we asked in our community survey was slogans, and took a variety of those options. So in your packet should have been the top 20 from that community survey. So one of the items we wanted to talk about at our open house and have as a voting item specifically is, what is the top slogan? I do think it's important that we have more like 4 options for the public to vote on rather than 20. And so that's why I'm here tonight, is to see if we can whittle down that list into a top 4 or top 3, something that we'd all live with if that ended up being the slogan. Because if we are going to offer it up to the public to vote on, we should follow through with whatever the top vote is. So reading off those top slogans, starting from the top to the bottom, is small town feel, big town amenities. Small town, big community. Small town, big heart. Small town with a big heart. Sorry, they're a little bit redundant, but kind of felt like they had their own little charm to it. Small town charm, small town charm, where everyone is your friend. Country living is best. Open Heart Elmont, Elmont Raiders, home of the Raiders and friendly neighbors. Elmont Strong, where neighbors are friends and friends are family. A place to call home, a place to call home to. Building towards the future while remembering the past. Looking forward to the future with guidance from our past. We are growing in the right direction. Come for scenery, stay for the community. Elmont proud, past promising future, and when you're here, you're home. Up north starts here. So a bit of variety, some redundancies, but I'll turn the floor back over to you on a theme.
Yes, I mean, do you want to hear from council members as to any preferences that may have as to the 20 you read off? And since everybody okay with that, or does council not want to comment on these right now? I looked into some of them, look, not bad. Some was like,
Huh?
At least there's no pirate ship.
Right.
I'll take the hit on that one.
I'm going to tear up my suggestion.
When you're here, you're home, kind of,
That one pops out to me too. So.
yeah, I kind of like that. It shouldn't be too long.
I like a place to call home.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Even up north starts here is very interesting.
Yeah, place to call home is a little bit better, and it's shorter and it's more succinct. Elmont,
Up north starts here. That's also somewhat of the Village of Holly. Just I don't know everybody's slogans, but I do know a few. So just so you know your competitors, it's at least in another county on the other side. So
But we're farther north, so
we are farther
We are
north.
farther north, yeah. They just happen to be close to 75.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, it seems like home is a reoccurring theme in most of these.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So yeah, the other home one is when you're here, you're home,
Mhm.
versus a
Yeah.
place to call home.
Elmont Strong, we'd have to probably put barbells, the north and south end.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
like that one.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
too, it's like a common thing lately.
Small town with a big heart, it's not bad.
That for, that's nothing before us, budget.
Direction, it's kind of like what we have now, isn't it? So it's like, needs to flow.
Yeah, and I think we need to have as a village, we need to have a separate image from the school.
Yeah, yes,
Right.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
should have a planning
yeah,
commission.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't, I mean,
Can-
we need to have our own
yeah.
image, it's not the home of a high school.
Elmont Raiders is great on the water tower, but for the model for the village, I don't think so. And I mean, the thing that we've seen happening is, and it was kind of highlighted by the Heritage Festival, is the community, and it's growing and it's getting bigger. And it's the only thing I don't like about small town. We are a small town, but there's been lots of developments, and we'll be discussing later some more developments that are going on and building up. So I'm not real crazy about the small town thing from that standpoint of, I mean, there are people coming into village in downtown with a lot of money.
How many do you have, Caitlin?
So I have our top 3 so far is small town with a big heart, a place to call home, and when you're here, you're home.
Honestly, like if you think about it as like a commercial, that when you're here, you're home, just keeps sticking in my head. It's like something you can remember.
A jingle,
Yeah.
if you will.
Well, on redundancy, if we've got those three, if no one else on council has any suggestions, I would suggest we take those three to the open house and see what we get.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get write-ins, just so we know.
Right.
No parachutes.
Okay, well, thank you for that. One of the other topics we're going to be talking about is transportation, so specifically sidewalks and roadways. So we did our sidewalk inventory, talking about some of our gaps, bad connections. And so that's one of the things we're going to talk about is how do we get buy-in and help identify that issue, specifically for sidewalks. One of the things we want to showcase specifically for roadways is our 10-year maintenance plan. So take that opportunity since the public is there. Do you know of this plan? Are you aware of it? And show what's going to happen in the next couple of years, showing us that we are aware of the road condition and we are trying to work on fixing it.
So that's roads and sidewalks, right? Not just sidewalks?
Correct. We're doing both. Sidewalks is probably going to be the more input-based one because roadways, we already generally have that plan that we've spent a lot of time on. So it's an education more so. The other one is talking about what needs to be protected. And so we did have our top 4 values from that community survey. I think it was over 70% of everyone agreed in the right direction on those top 4. And so what we're going to do is provide a ranking system on how do we maintain protecting those 4 values. And they'll help us rank what those are. One of the things is talking about what we need to add. As part of that community survey, we asked specifically those who are the young individuals. We tried to target some of the different schools and ask what would make you want to come back to your community. That's something from a national/state trend that we're watching is that a lot of communities are having a loss in an upcoming generation. And they're nowhere for them to come back to. It's either a choice, they rather go to another community like Grand Rapids or something like that. But some of it is they don't have the opportunity because there's not enough housing stock for them to buy back or to come back to. So we'll be talking about what needs to be done. Some of it's going to be demographic information. We did a decent amount of forecasting on what we anticipate will happen based on the data available. So a little bit of education, but also talking about if we see it, what do we really want to see? So one of those things was in the downtown, more entertainment, more restaurants, more vibrancy. So making sure they feel heard and how do we encourage that? The last item at the open house is talking about Burley Park and talking about some proposed improvements that we were talking about. So last I understood, there was some talk about by the flagpole and our memorial that's there, some on-street parking to add to the DDA, a sidewalk, a seating or decorative wall, maybe some landscaping. Is that pretty accurate with what we're generally proposing there? Okay. So that's anticipated then for the open house. Our next meeting with the Planning Commission is in November. That is a very crucial meeting from our master plan development standpoint. So if you'd like to be part of that conversation, I encourage you to come. It's that first Thursday of the month. So that's November 3rd, 7:30.
Something like that.
We'll be talking about specifically our future land use map, which is specifically what do we anticipate zoning to be in the future. So zoning is what you can do here and now, and the future land use says we can up zone, we can down zone. Do we want to change how many residential districts we have? What's the density of residential units that's appropriate? So that's going to be a big talking point at that meeting. I anticipate at this point, we're probably not going to do the open house with the holidays coming up. But we'll have that discussion also in November, when makes the most sense to have that open house. So with that, that's my master plan update.
Super. Any commentary from council? Other than great job, Caitlin, thank you. Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so moving on to regular agenda item number 2, our usual Halloween ordinance, AKA emergency ordinance number 2023-1. So this is standard every year. We pass this. And we think it's necessary because we don't like being toilet papered or whatever. Breaks or whatever. It's standard language, same every year.
So this impacts everybody in the audience tonight.
If you're the
If you're
appropriate age.
17 or under.
Yeah.
This impacts you.
Yes. And if they want to comment on it, that's fine. We want to know what your costumes are going to be. I know. They had their chance.
They had their chance, yeah.
But we might want to know what their costumes are going to be, so.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion, we adopt the emergency ordinance number
Thank you.
2023-1 as presented.
And I'll support.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Kulagowski, to approve emergency ordinance number 2023-1. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Unanimously approved by all of those in attendance, all council members in attendance. Regular agenda item number 3, wastewater treatment plant improvement projects. So, thought Clint might be here, but he's not, so. Are you going to lead this, Manager Trent?
Yes, I am. And good evening, council. We wanted to come before you tonight to get your approval on these 3 projects that we're submitting for your consideration. And Clint Farley did a very nice job of putting this package together. Unfortunately, he's a little under the weather. We've got a bug that seems to be going through some of our employees this week, and so he was not able to be with us tonight. But I asked Clint to provide some pictures so that you had a better appreciation of some of the repairs that were in need of replacing, and the cost factor as well. And so we've got a summary of the 3 projects and the costs related to that, as well as some pictures in your packet as well. After you get past the first intro slide, you'll see a picture of the equalization tank drain valve number 3 repair that shows the worn gears. And we had a similar part that broke in 2019. And at that time, we had parts available to fix, but because of the change in vendors, et cetera, those parts are now obsolete. So it's necessary for us to invest in a new gearbox for that project. The next slide shows the interior of the sludge tank, which has a deteriorating roof inside, which the concrete is falling down. It's causing pea gravel on the cement, and so it's causing damage to some components in that sludge tank. And our recommendation is that we want to reline the tank. And we've had quotes from other vendors that talked about doing a complete overhaul with a new roof. Costs as high as over $200,000 to go that route. We think the proposal that we're submitting to you today is much more modest, has a 10-year warranty, and will cost just under $50,000.
Is this the root cause for the sludge pump getting destroyed? Those particulates coming from the roof?
Mhm, yes.
Probably those impellers.
The next slide shows a pump that was installed in 1989. And according to Clint, it was undersized at the time, but it was the only one that would fit based on the piping that was in the basement. We tried to rebuild it, but to no effect. But we were able to find a replacement pump through HESCO, which is part of the quote that we'll be reviewing shortly, that is properly sized and easier to repair. And some of the old piping can be removed to make room for this larger sludge pump. And then there's some other components, pictures that show the rotary lobes that got damaged, that needed to be replaced. We tried working with a tool and die shop to see if they could retrofit it, but to no avail. So we're moving forward with a butterfly valve from Michigan Pipe and Valve to replace those components. And then just for your knowledge of how much wear and tear some of these components do get, that show the activity of how sewage impacts pumps and components in the plant, where we had sent one pump to Kennedy for evaluation, and it turned out the components were way beyond repair. And so one of our other recommendations is that we invest in a pump from HESCO, which will cost a little over $17,000 plus labor to install.
And that's that return activated sludge pump number 3.
Yes. Now, one of the reasons we wanted to come forward to you tonight, we had thought about tying this in with the audit report, which is pushed back to the first meeting in November, where we would be coming forward with some budget amendments. We're still planning on coming forward with some budget amendments, but we've got some better news, if you will, that doesn't impact the budget as bad as we initially thought a couple weeks ago. And that is that one of the items that was budgeted was the sewer repair project on West St. Clair from our federal grant monies, which we thought was going to happen this current fiscal year. We've since learned in the last few weeks that we're going to have to push that project back to 25 just because of the amount of time that's involved in design to comply with MDOT requirements. But we had $170,000 budgeted in the budget for that. And we're going to be able to take that $170,000 out. And the cost of these projects is approximately $90,000. So at the end of the day, we're saving $80,000 in our budget. Our sewer fund budget was forecast to be in the hole this year by about $20,000. But at the end of the day, we'll actually be in the black. So the other reason we wanted to come forward with you this tonight is that because we wanted to compress the lead time for ordering these components so that we're not waiting an extra 3 weeks to order a pump and have, maybe not get it until after the new year. So, or let's say later into the new year. So,
That subject, you're indicating that the project we have to move back is the West St. Clair redo?
yeah, West St. Clair, East St. Clair Road project with the water main replacement.
But, so the question that arose in my mind as you were presenting this is, we're having to push it back in part because of MDOT requirements. And so how does MDOT become involved unless we're talking about underneath Main Street 53?
The engineers use the term MDOT, that there's some, requirements as you're going through design of a major road that you have to comply with, the standards that MDOT.
And that would apply even to West St. Clair,
Oh, yes.
which is not a road. I'm not a Michigan road. Okay, all right. Curious. Because I don't build roads, so.
I don't know if it's partly tied in because we're using federal monies as well.
Oh, okay.
So,
Makes sense. Okay, thank you.
but anyway, from a budget standpoint, we actually don't get hurt as much as we might have initially thought, with this $90,000 combined project cost that, we're going to be able to deduct $170,000 out of our budget for that sewer line replacement on West St. Clair. So we actually, at the end of the fiscal year, will be in the black in that fund.
Could you explain how you got that $90,000 number? I'm just adding up the three numbers here. I get about 70,000 minus
We're fudging some numbers in for labor and installation.
20,000.
That's a ballpark estimate, but again, it's significantly less than the 170,000.
And that was for 2024 that we budgeted the. Okay.
So then, based on the original install dates of most of this equipment, I'm assuming just regular routine maintenance, it's lasted like the pump since 1988, as long as parts and components are available. I'm just thinking, is there any other additional components we can put in line to protect, critical devices like this? Is there gates or screening or something like that? I got to imagine that they've looked into those sorts of stuff to stop like a hunk of concrete from rolling through and wiping out another pump.
Right.
So,
Yeah, those components are there, but.
are there? Okay.
But,
So,
this is, let's say
Fine
many,
aggregate.
many years of wear and tear.
so we buy a new pump today. I mean, service life, normal maintenance, council member, from way distant future might be looking at replacing at that time.
Part of that, I think, is making sure we fix the roof of that
Oh, yes, yeah, relining
sludge
the
tank
thing.
first
Right.
before you put all the stuff in line and let all of that fine debris go through it before you get to that part. The
Gonna
one
be-
question I was going to ask, though, is that knowing in the future, we're in master planning right now, we know the wastewater treatment plant isn't going to move the same amount of sewage in the next 5 or 10 years. Is there an opportunity to upscale slightly so that we can handle more volume in the future without having to replace all these things in 5 years?
That's a good question. It's something that I'm working on, trying to figure out how can we increase capacity. Obviously, our I&I efforts will help us in that direction as well too. But I have had some initial discussions with F&V about what can we do to increase our capacity. I've got a goal of like 50% increase just so that we can.
Taking from the township, the only other capacity we have are the 80 or 90 acres behind West Winds and the little bit of acreage that looks like it's going to be difficult to fully build on behind Drakeshire. So unless we're inputting from the township, and if we are inputting from the township, then contractors should be helping pay the stipend for those updates. Yeah. Drakeshire was built, we upgraded the June Drive lift station, and the contractors paid part of that bill.
Okay, but that's out there. That's out at I'm thinking back here at the main base You know, if we're currently 6-inch and we need to go to an 8-inch or a 10-inch, that way we don't move the bottleneck back into the wastewater treatment plant on brand new equipment.
When the project was presented to us of developing it, Huff Road in 53, which is right across the village line.
I know that capacity was not
Yeah,
there.
but the funding was going to be coming from private sources for taking the pipeline down there, all the way down to Boardman. It's going to cost about $5 million
Mhm.
at that point, but that was the plan, and there were actually private parties that were willing to finance that because it looked promising at the time. And then the world changed, so it didn't go forward. But
Yeah. Okay, just a
it's
thought.
feasible. It's feasible. Well, are we still having some knocking at the door about developing? I don't recall the gentleman's name. The developer has quite a sizable number of acres and wants to develop it into residential. And he's approached us about that, and that would be,
About the Kidder property?
yeah, I think so. I don't recall the gentleman's name.
Dupree?
It's been a while, but that also raises questions, because if it's not village property, Brian has concerns about having our infrastructure in township land without them being able to maintain the infrastructure. So those are questions that would have to be addressed at that time.
Thought that was village.
The 80, are we talking the 80 acres behind Westman's, or are we talking about the field on Kidder that's 80 acres going to Huff?
Not Westlands, no.
Across
The
from
latter.
Drakeshire.
That's town, on
It
the
is.
west side is township, on the east side behind Drakeshire Village.
Okay. So he was hoping to extend into the township?
It was never addressed. They approached us a few times and they were gonna be township, but then our DPW had concerns about having that amount of infrastructure out of our hands to maintain. Those are issues that would have to be addressed if we were approached again.
Yeah, right now, the only realistic property that I could see being developed in the next few years would be the property east of Drakeshire and the Caitlin 7 sub.
There's also been talk about the farm field between Hamilton and the schools. I mean, it hasn't been talked about in years, but there's also been potential there in the past.
Right, okay,
But that's also township.
yeah.
Yeah, going back to the master plan that was put forth 5 years ago, and that one was joint. There was discussion in terms of extending water services into the township. And of course, then we'd have to address the expansion of our capability of wastewater treatment.
We need three different motions on this, I would think, correct?
If you'd like to do it that way, that would be fine, yes.
I'll make the motion that we, these are projected costs, so do you want not to exceed motion, or how do you want, or do you just want a specific to that cost?
If you can give us the flexibility to just add installation and labor and or if you, another alternative, if you're open to this, is let's do it not to exceed over $100,000 for all three projects. That gives us the,
Okay. So we do that then, yeah, but if we do that, then we've got to do all three in one motion, and there's differing vendors.
Yeah.
Why don't we just do it for the projected cost right now, and then when you come back to us with the labor at the time?
oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can.
I don't like giving out generic hypothetical numbers in a motion.
It would be best practices if we had separate motions as to each. If
Okay.
Kim was here, I think she'd be
I'll
saying
make,
that.
I'll make the motion that we approve the EQ. I have one further question. you said there's no budgetary concerns. Is there any other future outlying concerns of budget things that we might have to worry about? Or is it because this is within the sewer fund, it's self-contained?
It's within the sewer funds,
Gotcha.
self-contained.
I'll make the motion that we approve the EQ valve replacement at the projected cost of $3,045. And with any labor costs to be brought back to council at the time of implementation.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Feldman, to approve of the purchase of the EQ valve replacement in the amount stated on the record. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Unanimously approved by all those council members in attendance. Moving on.
I'll make a motion that we approve the sludge pump replacement at the cost of $17,375 with any labor cost to be brought back to council at the time of implementation.
Support.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Kulikowski, to approve of the sludge pump replacement and the value set forth, cost set forth on the record. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Unanimously approved by all.
One side note before I make the last motion.
Okay.
This package with the pictures of the equipment, the pictures of the new equipment and the locations within the wastewater treatment plant. I mean, we've gotten pictures of when we buy equipment and stuff, but especially with the wastewater treatment plant, going forward, this is one of the best presentations I've seen. So it really gave us insight on what it all looked like. So that's much appreciated.
I'm gonna make that same comment myself, so well done.
Yeah,
Sorry to be long-winded.
best presentation we've ever
Sorry to be
seen.
long-winded. I make the motion that we approve the sludge holding tank relining at the projected cost of $49,500.
Support.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Powell. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Unanimously approved by all council members in attendance. And that wraps up our regular agenda for this evening. Audience, now is the time for public comment for any item that was not on our agenda for this evening. Is there any public comment for non-agenda items? Being none. We do have open discussion, food truck ordinance. You're back, Caitlin.
Mr. Trent, I don't know if you or I want to go in on it or.
We can tag team if you want to start with any comments.
Sure.
That's fine.
So I'm here tonight, not only for the master plan, but also part of the author of working on the food truck language, and heard there was some discussion at this level of the stage. And so I'm here to answer any questions you have on current language. There's things that you're concerned about. How do we make those modifications, or looking at that internal application or form that we wanted to do. So just a recap, I guess, of what the food truck regulation is right now it's considered a permitted use by right in our general commercial as well as our industrial zoning district. If we did want to allow it in the downtown, we would also need to add it as a permitted use in our C1 zoning district. So that would be a change you'd have to consider tonight if you did want to allow it in our downtown. Other than we purposely put an exclusion for village-sponsored events. And so if there's music in the park or if we have a festival, food trucks are able to be downtown without necessarily a permit being required. So food trucks are that seasonal or temporary vehicle that's selling food and beverages. They require 2 different parking spaces. Basic components that were required for each of them is to make sure there's some type of tempering or barrier to protect the sales area or customers. So right outside the food truck, if there's just some type of easy little rope or stand or cones that just help make sure that vehicles realize it's not a drive-through food truck, something of that nature. We want to make sure that's on a paved surface. So most likely they're in a parking lot. And so we want to make sure they're in a parking lot, not on the grass next to the parking lot. They're making sure that they're operating within the setbacks of the zoning district. So for most of our zoning districts, other than the downtown, we have a setback where the building can be. And so that's specifically giving it some perimeter of where it could be. So in most of our parking lot situations, they wouldn't be able to be right on the edge of the parking lot. They'd have to be a little farther in. So wherever you could put a building is where you could have a food truck, not just anywhere in the parking lot. We require it to be outside of the right of way. That was just an over clarification to make sure that we knew of somebody that was utilizing that. As part of the application process, we wanted to make sure there was additional information regarding source, a letter of support from the property owner. Typically they lease or they'll more casually have a gentleman's agreement to be there on Tuesdays, Thursdays, whatever hours. Method of power for a lot of these food trucks. Generators, the most common, so we know information on that, and then a copy of their health department approval, hours of operation and days of the week, and then a plot plan, which is in layman's terms, essentially, I want a sketch that shows you in the entire parcel, where am I going to be? So it's not a full surveyed plan, it's a Google map image where you just generally show me where you're going to be. So that's the general level of detail. I know in the draft version of the form, they talked about different noise levels, so that's something that's not currently in their language. If you wanted that to apply to everybody, I would encourage we add it to the zoning requirements. In the zoning ordinance right now, we have noise regulations, but it's very general. It's not a decibel reading. Decibel readings are measurable. You can take out your phone, you can download an app, and you can say you are so many decibels. So with that, I think that's kind of a general recap. Different things that I've heard and how you could make some minor modifications and then move that forward. Mr. Trent?
Regarding noise, I did pass out a reference sheet regarding decibel level. Caitlin and I have reviewed it. You'll recall that in the sample from one of the other communities that was in the packet 2 weeks ago, that they had a 70 decibel level at 15 feet. After reviewing what some of the noise levels are for some of these other types of activities, Caitlin and I thought that 60 decibels was a realistic level to maintain for generator noise for an extended period of time, let's say a half hour, that wouldn't cause ear damage. So
Who takes the decibel reading? I mean, who does that?
it can be the fire department or DPW, or as Caitlin said, you can apparently download an app off your phone. And right, well, we're assuming that if you have a patron and they're sitting at a picnic table, and they're going to be gone within a half hour.
Okay, so it's a specific person for 30 minutes.
Tolerance associated with that 60? Is it 69? Is it
60.
60?
Interesting.
And some of you engineers might be familiar with some of the new generator models, and if there's a certain decibel level that they're manufactured to where they don't emit those loud levels of noise, as long as they're maintained properly. So
Some pretty quiet ones out there.
I think
70 isn't so unreasonable. I mean, it's a washing machine in your home. You deal with it on a daily basis. We could argue that city traffic in downtown Elmont is probably closer to 100 versus the 85, especially when the trucks go through. But yeah, I mean, 70, 75 is what I've seen in a lot of places for. But 60, I don't know how many vendors will complain, because you will have to have a newer ultra quiet generator. You won't be able to use the 25-year-old one that you've used. Yeah.
Previously commented we're not trying to chase them out of town.
So
Yeah, yeah.
It's, I mean,
That's why I would
170.
recommend a range, because if 60 might be, you know, if you have somebody come in at 62, are you going to not permit them or not? So it might be advisable to have a range between 60 and 70 or 60 and 75.
So then we would propose, then we draft the language not to exceed 70, because you don't need
Right.
to have a minimum.
Yeah, I agree. You don't, believe me,
Yeah, yeah.
you don't want to
No, I don't want
enforce
a
a
minimum,
range.
but yeah.
You don't want to try to enforce a range, whoever has to enforce it. Because as soon as you do, you're biased for the guy who's got the expensive generator versus the guy who's right at 1 decibel over. Right? You just want not to exceed whatever we agree, and if you're over, you're over. If you're not, you're not. Easy to enforce.
standing, we're talking about trying to get a second reading on the food truck ordinance. Plus, we have to amend our noise ordinance, correct? Is
We
that what
don't
you
have
were
to
indicating?
formally revise the noise ordinance. If we want to have a requirement specifically for food trucks and their anticipated noise because of a generator, that's when we want to put the 70 decibels.
Okay.
I'm not familiar.
Okay.
I'm confident you guys probably have a separate police power for that, but
I think Steve's asking though, is that have to be input into the food truck ordinance or the general noise ordinance?
it depends how you want it to apply. So if you want it to only apply to food trucks, then it would just be to this provision. If you'd like it to apply to all uses, then it would be more appropriate elsewhere.
So then you couldn't have Main Street. So it has to be the food truck ordinance, I would think.
Then we're going to pull it back. No, then we'd have to pull it back.
To,
From first we've already done first reading.
okay.
Mhm.
It's that first reading, so
And we had-
if we make those language changes, it'll have to come back for first reading again.
Is that true? Or can you make an amendment
Well, I
between
think
first and
the
second?
level was only on the permit itself. It wasn't on the actual ordinance, correct?
For enforcement, it would have to be within the
Yeah.
ordinance.
Mhm.
So it has to be in the zoning ordinance. I'm not as familiar with the village charter. I know other communities like cities do a first reading, no changes, and then do a second reading, and that's when they do make changes. But again, different villages can have different charters.
What does the clerk look at that?
Yeah.
It's also best practices, I would think, from that standpoint. And
That's how we've always done it.
And this thing's been a bit of a yo-yo because it came before us and we didn't even have first reading. So the complications of it. And then we did get to first reading and
And
But-
I would highly recommend this only pertain to food trucks. And the
Yes.
only reason being
I agree.
is if you've ever been on East St. Clair when there's a power outage, there's a lot of generators that would not meet the requirement. But at the same time, people want power at their house.
I think it's creating a nightmare scenario.
Yeah,
if it was
yeah.
As to the entire village,
So
not
if it's consensus of council that we're going to add this to the ordinance, then I would suggest that we make it a consensus to pull back first reading, have you revise the ordinance and bring it back to council the first meeting in November for new first reading.
I'm on board with that.
Caitlin, have
Karen?
a question?
One of the other things that I noted early on was if
Yeah.
you wanted to allow food trucks to be in the downtown.
I was just gonna ask about adding, are we gonna add C1?
That was the whole point. of
That was the whole point,
ordinance,
yeah.
Yep.
So it'd have to come back anyway, so.
Okay, so the two changes I have then is that we would add it as a permitted use to C1, and then we would add a design standard 5, talking about the decibel reading not to exceed 70 decibels, renable 5 to 6, which is the application, just to keep requirements near each other in application.
At a given distance.
So typically, for compliance of noise violations, it's at the property line. And so that's probably how we would write it.
The only reason I say that is because when it comes to sound, it's very sensitive to
Mhm.
distance,
Correct.
right? So we have to test stuff to sound all the time at work, and it's very specific on distance, direction.
So we have consensus on those changes from everyone?
Consensus. Good.
Welcome.
Eventually, we'll actually maybe pass the ordinance. Just do it the right way.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
want to do
Yeah.
do it right. We don't want
Absolutely. Thank you, Caitlin. I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention, Caitlin, I got Wade Trim newsletter, and I appreciated that, indicating various projects that Wade Trim works on, since your firm is our engineering and planning firm. So I've seen what other projects you're working on. I mean, they're big projects, big places, but interesting, and give us some idea of the work that you do, and we can do something big here. Who knows? So, thank you. Okay, so that takes care of food truck ordinance. So we are undoubtedly about to go into closed session. So let's go forward with council manager comment at this point in time, so that we can go into closed session after we've wrapped up all of regular council business. Manager Trent, do you have anything to bring to council?
Yes, I'd like to share several items with you. Caitlin and I had the opportunity to meet last week with Joe Israel, who owns the corner lot at 53 and Main Street, Hot Corners. And Joe has submitted a concept plan for our consideration that's going to require some ZBA review as well, just because of the tightness of the lot and what he's proposing to do. But it's an interesting concept where he's planning on doing a 2-story structure, first floor retail, and 2 one-bedroom studio apartments on the second floor that would be rented out periodically. And so it's an interesting concept that he's submitted to us, and something that will be going through the pipeline here over the next few months as he develops drawings and submits for ZBA approval before it goes to the Planning Commission.
Interesting.
There's been some discussion in the last couple of weeks about some activity that's been going on at the Gas Becker Insurance Agency parking lot. I wanted to advise you folks that I had a conversation with the owner today to ask him to remove the barrels that are on the north end of his curb stops that he put in place. In reviewing that with Fire Chief Smith as well as Police Chief Martin, we're concerned about emergency access. And his comment to me was, show me the ordinance, I'll review it with my attorney and send a comment back to you in writing. Well, I did some additional research, and based on MCL 257.942, as well as our zoning ordinance, we've got enough ammunition where I feel that we are in the right to require him to provide an emergency access lane in his parking lot. So I've got a call into Mr. Gildner to help confirm my assessment of our ordinance, and we'll deal with that. But that's something I hope to have resolved by early next week at the latest. I understand his rationale as to why he's doing what he's doing, but by the same token, we need to be concerned about emergency access for large fire trucks and police activity if necessary in that area. So
Keeps going.
So why is he doing what he's doing?
he claims that his patrons that visit the post office box were concerned about the speed of vehicles that were going through in front of the building, and that that it was a safety concern. Ultimately, though, part of the reason is the increased activity of a business next door that was utilizing many of his parking spots Wednesday through Saturday. So
That's what it's really about. Because this has gone back
Yeah,
and
'cause
forth
I'm one of
for
the
10 or more
patrons
years.
that uses those post office boxes every single day, and it's a nightmare. I almost ran the barrels down myself the other day just to do it.
Yeah, he blocks them and then they come off, and he blocks them and then they come off. And what he said to you, that's his usual reaction. No, I'm not going to cooperate. Okay,
we're
thanks.
dealing with it. I wanted to let you know that we're
Yeah.
having that dialogue and try
Good.
to get it rectified here in short order.
Rule of law. Follow it. Jackass.
Tomorrow, assuming that there's no upset from Mother Nature, there will be an overlay road project done on St. Joe Court, Janet Lane, and Dawn Drive tomorrow. The other projects that were part of the Category B road project are getting pushed back to the spring just because the weather has changed. 2 weeks ago, Kim Adams on WDIV said the temperatures are going to be above average this month. Well, obviously, Mother Nature proved her wrong, so as well as the rain that we're having. So the contractor is committed to doing that project tomorrow, and we'll push back the rest of the projects to the spring. A couple weeks ago, it was suggested that for our redevelopment ready certification process that maybe we investigate a college intern. I've reached out to Oakland U and Baker College. They'll be posting job opportunities next week. So I just wanted to let you know I appreciated that suggestion, and we're moving forward in that direction. I think as President Schneider already mentioned that the movie theater and the medical building closed last week. And so that's another step forward in our future revitalization of our downtown and getting the east side of M53 looking just as nice as the west side. So hopefully that'll be something that the new owner will undertake in an expeditious manner.
Yeah, and I really expect so. It won't be like the previous owner of that property with certain things were promised and never done. His property manager has already been out to meet with us and did a thorough on-site review with her son, who was her helpful contractor, going through both buildings. And this gentleman, who's the purchaser, has the wherewithal and funds to redo both those buildings. Projected cost at this point, maybe $1.5 million for both buildings, maybe more. So it's going to be a real plus. And due to the east side of Main Street, what was done to
Yes.
the west side.
And the Raider Bistro, Coney Island, sold and is under new ownership. They're remodeling, and they plan to open next Monday if everything goes according to plan. So Brunch at Joe's will be open from 7 to 3, 7 days a week, starting next week, hopefully. And Caitlin and I had the opportunity to attend the Michigan Association of Planning Conference 2 weeks ago, or was it last week? Week and a half ago? I can't even remember now, but it was a great conference, a lot of good breakout sessions. The general sessions were excellent. One of the speakers talked about 13 ways to kill a community. And one of them is don't paint. You know, that if you want, your town to look inviting, you need to do some maintenance and updates and upkeep, and paint helps. And attracting business and retaining business is critical as well too. So he gave some interesting stories about how communities that waged war in the past from things that happened years ago ended up deterring economic activity, where companies wanted to come and invest in their towns and share the wealth, but because of animosities from whatever happened years ago, that those companies said, thanks, but no thanks, we'll go elsewhere. So again, attracting economic development is critical to improving your vitality in your town, and keeping jobs, and giving people resources to come to your community.
And the attractiveness also plays into our DDA's facade grant program, where we provide funds to businesses downtown to redo their frontage usually. So that plays right into that. And so.
And there was one very interesting session that dealt with trees that was presented by a DNR individual, and provided a lot of insight as to the types of trees that are the best to utilize, spacing, planting, things of that nature. So as we've had some discussion here about maybe becoming a tree city, that those will be helpful to us going forward. So I plan to come forward with proposals in that regard in the future as well. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. Manager, appreciate it. Lisa, do you want to bring anything to council? Wayne?
Actually answered mine, so we're good.
Pete?
I'm good as well.
Tim?
Tree Village.
Right. Right.
Writing campaign.
That could be the model for the village. Okay. Ed?
No, just, again, compliments on the DPW report. Very well put together. So, very clear. So,
Steve?
I just had one question. Do you know if at the auction, if the Charger Explorer generator were sold?
To be honest, I failed to ask staff if we got feedback on that. Did we see a check come in, or have you heard from
I have
the troops?
No.
Okay, but we'll pass the information on. We'll find out tomorrow.
Just curious, where do those funds go?
They will go into the equipment fund.
Pay for the first year of a police car.
So
all.
Steve, in terms of the improvement in our downtown area, in the east side, very close to the sale of Mikey's to the prospective purchaser. Just submitting liquor control documentation. It's only about 55 forms you have to fill out for Liquor Control Commission and lottery. And then that undoubtedly will also be upgraded from its present existence. So that's another improvement to our downtown and our community. So that's a good thing. So I think it's time.
Go into closed session in accordance with section 8A, 8C, and AD of the Michigan Open Meeting Act, Public Act 267, 1976, conducted first the evaluation of Manager Trent's performance, to discuss settlement strategy in connection with civil action number 21-12045 Laurel Black versus Almont Village, and a strategy and negotiation session connected with negotiations for collective bargaining agreements.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Glasser. Any further discussion on that, the motion? Lisa, roll call?
Gowski.
Aye.
Powell.
Aye.
Dyke.
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Glasser. Schneider.
Aye. Unanimously approved by all those council members in attendance. And students, if you want to bring up agendas, we can sign them for you. Time to go home or wherever you're going to go.